What's something obvious for everyone, but you only just realized? This happened a long time ago, but I still remember it clearly. The first time I ever had my eyes checked, I was in first or maybe second grade. I didn't think anything was wrong. To me, everything seemed completely normal. During the exam, the optometrist suddenly got quiet and then told my mom that I was almost completely blind in one eye. She turned to me shocked and asked, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I just looked back at her confused and said, "I thought everyone only had one eye that actually worked." I genuinely believed that's how vision was supposed to be. And it didn't stop there. For most of my life, I kept assuming my eyesight was normal. It wasn't until I turned 30 that I found out something else wasn't right, those streaky, stretched-out lights I saw at night. I thought everyone saw them that way. Turns out they don't. That's called astigmatism.
I didn't realize my mom had a name until first grade. One day, our teacher went around the class asking everyone, "What's your mother's name?" One by one, kids answered without hesitation. Then it got to me, and I froze. I had no idea. It had honestly never crossed my mind that my mom had a name outside of Mom. In that moment, I felt completely lost, like I had somehow missed something obvious that everyone else just knew. The second school ended, I rushed home. She was in the kitchen, cooking like always, completely unaware of the small crisis I'd been having all day. I walked up to her and asked, "Mom, what's your name?" She paused, smiled warmly, knelt down to my level, and gently told me. It turned into a really sweet moment. But I still remember that feeling. Like, how did I not know something so simple?
I'm not a native English speaker, so maybe that makes this a little more understandable. But for the longest time, I completely misunderstood what sitcom meant. I genuinely thought it was called that because the characters were always sitting. I mean, think about it, they're usually in a living room, on a couch, or hanging out in a bar. In my head, it made perfect sense. Sitcom, people sitting, being funny, that had to be it. I never questioned it. For years, I just accepted that explanation like it was common knowledge. It wasn't until much later that I found out it actually stands for situational comedy. And suddenly, everything clicked. But I'm not going to lie, realizing that my perfectly logical theory was completely wrong. That was a humbling moment.
When I was around 8, I watched my dad pumping gas and noticed the numbers on the pump, 87, 89, 93. I asked him what they meant. Without missing a beat, he told me those were the years the gas was made, and that newer gas was more expensive. It made perfect sense to me. I accepted it instantly and never questioned it again. Fast forward to when I was about 19. I was in the car with my boyfriend, and we pulled up to a gas station. Trying to be helpful, I offered to pump the gas for him. Before getting out, I casually asked, "Hey, what year gas do you use?" He just stared at me, completely confused. "What do you mean?" So I explained it, exactly how my dad had told me years ago. There was a pause, and then he completely lost it. He was laughing so hard he could barely breathe, tears in his eyes. And that's the moment I realized I had been confidently wrong for over a decade.
I only recently realized I had completely misunderstood a phrase I'd heard my whole life. With friends like these, who needs enemies? For years, I thought it was actually a compliment, like your friends are so amazing, so loyal, that you don't even have to worry about enemies. It sounded kind of poetic in my head. I never questioned it. Then one day, it finally clicked. That's not what it means at all. It actually means your friends are so terrible, they might as well be your enemies.
A few years ago, I had one of those realizations that makes you question how you went so long without understanding something so obvious. The Christmas song, "I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus." Yeah, I completely misunderstood it my entire life. As a kid, I took it very literally. I thought the song was about the mom actually kissing Santa, like the real Santa, and that it meant she was being unfaithful. In my head, it painted a very different picture of the situation. And somehow, I never questioned it. That interpretation just stuck with me for years. Every time I heard the song, I'd think, wow, that's kind of messed up. Then, when I was 26, it finally clicked. Santa was Santa. It was the dad, dressed up. I recently had one of those moments where you realize your entire understanding of something was just wrong. My husband was at the store buying a bottle of hot honey, and I remember laughing a little, thinking it was ridiculous marketing. I casually said something like, "Why do they even call it hot honey? All honey is already spicy." He just stared at me. Turns out, that is absolutely not normal. After a bit more back and forth, we figured out I'm actually mildly allergic to honey, and what I thought was spice, this whole time was just my body reacting to it. It's wild how something so small can go unnoticed for years. No major reactions, no big warning signs, just a subtle sensation I assumed everyone had. And then one random conversation later in life makes you realize, nope, that was never supposed to happen at all.
I grew up with a lisp and basically sounded a lot like Neil Goldman from Family Guy. I never went to speech therapy, and nobody really stepped in to correct it, so I just assumed that was how I was supposed to speak. I was pretty self-conscious about it. My classmates would tease me here and there, nothing too extreme, but it still stuck with me. Then after high school, I was about 19. Something completely random happened. I was just messing around, making silly sounds with my mouth, when I accidentally placed my tongue in a slightly different position. And suddenly, my voice sounded normal. I remember freezing for a second like, wait, is this how it's supposed to sound? Was my tongue just in the wrong place this entire time when I talked? It genuinely felt like a switch flipped in my head. From that moment on, I just spoke normally. It was honestly a huge realization for me, almost shocking. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel a bit foolish that something so simple had gone unnoticed for so long. I was 42 when I had a realization that honestly made me question how I had never thought about it before. For most of my life, I assumed water towers were just giant storage tanks for emergencies, like backup supplies in case something went wrong. Then one day, during a storm, the power went out, but the water kept running just fine. That didn't make sense to me at first. Everything else was off, so why not the water? That's when it finally clicked. Water towers aren't mainly for storing water for emergencies. They're there to maintain water pressure. And I just sat there thinking, how did I not know this until now? I felt pretty foolish in that moment. I even remembered a comment I once read that made me laugh later, saying water towers aren't there so towns can show off their names like, "Look how much water we have," even though, for a while, that's kind of how I imagined them. It reminded me of another story I once heard. Back when GPS didn't exist, a couple of guys were flying around doing a migration study on geese and ducks. They got so focused on their work that they got completely lost. Eventually, they had to dip lower and actually fly past a small town's water tower just to read the name off it and figure out where they were on a map. Two totally different stories, but both made me realize how many simple things I've looked at my whole life without really understanding. I'm 32 years old, and I recently had a realization that honestly made me question how I never thought about it before. I always assumed golf was already kind of repetitive and dull, not really my thing. But in my head, I imagined it was even worse than it actually is. For the longest time, I thought golfers just played the exact same course over and over again, with the holes staying in the same place forever. Like, you memorize it once and that's it. And I remember thinking, who would even want to do that? Then I found out something very simple that completely broke that assumption. They actually move the holes around the course. Different positions, different layouts, same course but constantly changing.